Allergies and autoimmune diseases, pwede nga bang mawala or pwedeng makontrol gamit lang ng pag-alter or pag-monitor ng ating food intake? Of all the health benefits na nakita ko personally on my own and on my patients, isa sa mga pinaka-espesyal na mga topic for me to really go into is actually about allergies. So allergies or yung hypersensitivity reaction, ito yung ating hypersensitive reaction ng ating katawan na kung saan na ang isang bagay na others are not allergic to, hindi sila nagkakaroon ng masamang reaction. Other people tend to have reactions na sobra-sobra. So, this is considered as allergies or hypersensitive response. So, yung mga allergies, iba't iba yan. Pwede sa pagkain, pwede rin sa mga gamit like latex gloves, pwede rin sa alikabok. When in fact, akala natin alikabok lang, but yung allergies actually sa alikabok is brought about by a certain mite, no? Isa siyang microorganism na kung saan tayo ang allergic. Yung allergies natin usually comes from exposure to certain kinds of proteins. It's not just the dirt. Hindi lang ito basta yung dumi lang. In fact, people who are allergic to cats and dogs are actually not allergic to the whole cat and dogs in general, but they are allergic to the enzyme, to the proteins na nasa kanilang balahibo when the cats and dogs are actually licking themselves kapag sila ay nililinis nila yung kanilang sarili. So that's why our allergic response is individualized. Hindi lahat nagkakaroon ng allergies, but mostly people who have allergies almost always have hypersensitivity sa maraming bagay, hindi lang sa isang bagay. Yes, merong mga alam natin na common na mga allergens. Ano ba yung mga allergens na alam ninyo? Yung pinaka-common usually would be peanuts, meron ding eggs, meron ding chicken, meron ding ano pa ba yung mga common na allergies. Usually, yung mga ano yan, yung mga seafoods, those are the common food items na alam nating nakaka-trigger ng allergic response. However, alam nyo ba na based on my experience, on my own personal experience, and the experiences of my family and friends, and also mga patients na din natin, nakita natin na kahit pa allergic sila sa mga bagay na yon, but actually when they start doing low carb, when they start eliminating the sugar, eliminating the foods that increases the insulin in their body, they also noted na yung kanilang allergic reaction, yung kanilang hypersensitivity response to those common allergens are actually not that high. So, nakita natin that allergies pala are just reflection of inflammation. Inflammation lang pa ba yun na kapag ito ay na-lower down natin, our tendency to be allergic to those foods that are generally safe, generally not noxious, are actually going to also be lowered. I have one close friend na allergic siya noon sa lahat ng yon. Peanuts, seafoods, eggs, and chicken. But after 2 months of doing low carb, strict low carb on the safe list, and then doing intermittent fasting as well, after nyan, she can now tolerate all of these foods. She can now eat peanuts from time to time. She can now tolerate seafood. She now enjoys egg almost every day. And she can even eat chicken almost every day na. At alam nyo ba yung tinanggal niya? Hindi niya actually tinanggal yung mga common food items na yon that are considered allergens. Pero yung tinanggal lang niya would be two major things. And these two major things is actually related to one thing. This is sugar and starch. And this is both carbohydrates. So, ineliminate lang niya actually yung mga carbohydrates na nagpapataas ng kanyang insulin. So, when you eliminate kasi insulin, your body will also lower down the inflammation because insulin coming from sugar and starch, yun actually yung pinaka number one culprit na kapag eto ay parating stimulate like 3 times a day whenever we eat sweets, whenever we eat rice, whenever we drink soft drinks, those are triggered and it is going to induce inflammation in the body because insulin is an anabolic hormone. It is a hormone na nagbibigay ng signal sa ating katawan that it's building up, saving up time. So when our body is always on that saving up mode, always in that anabolic mode, hindi na niya lilinisin ang kanyang sarili. Nasa hoarding mode lang siya. Kung sa tao pa, hindi na siya nagliligpit. So, bili lang siya ng bili, nag-hoard ng nag-hoard. And what happens sa inyong bahay kapag sobra-sobra na ng gamit? Eventually, it's so hard to move around, mahihirapan kang mag-function, mahihirapan kang gawin yung mga kailangan mong gawin because sobrang daming kalat. At yun din po yung nangyayari sa ating katawan. When we eat so much regularly, generally on a standard Filipino diet of 3 cups a day, 3 rice a day, tapos may soft drinks pa, meron pang banana Q, may kamote Q, meron pang snacks, meron pang mga crackers in between, then those food signals will spike our blood sugar and it will spike our insulin. And yes, it can lead into many other manifestations. For others, yung iba't ibang effect ng insulin and pagtaas ng blood sugar, directly diabetes agad. Others naman, hindi nagkakaroon ng diabetes, pero nagkakaroon ng iba't ibang mga manifestations of inflammation, including hypertension or pagtaas ng blood pressure. Meron ding iba na tumutubo ng mga bukol, cancers and tumors. And for others, especially, ito yung nanotice natin, people who are non-fat formers, yung mga payat, yung mga hindi talaga tumataba, they are manifesting inflammation. So, yung iba nagkakaroon ng mga bukol sa kanilang paa, sa kanilang mga kamay, merong mga skin asthma, merong mga skin allergies, and yes, meron din pong psoriasis, meron ding GERD, yung iba. So, iba't iba yung manifestation of inflammation. And now we see that if we only lower down our insulin in the body, if we only lower down the food that spikes insulin, which the major cause would be sugar and starch, then we see that these effects are also subsiding. So if you are not yet into low carb and you've been suffering for these diseases, for your allergies, for your asthma, for your allergic rhinitis, and also other problems in your autoimmune diseases, like yung iba nagkakaroon ng autoimmune diseases, merong ulcerative colitis, meron ding iba, merong Crohn's disease, which is the autoimmune disease na nakikita natin sa loob ng ating internal organs, in our gastrointestinal system. If you are suffering from all those but you've never eliminated sugar and starch in yung katawan, see, you already followed the advices like paglimit ng karne, paglimit ng mga processed foods, you already avoided, what else yung common? Yung mga common allergens, you already avoided chicken, you already avoided seafoods, you already avoided nuts, but you never avoided sugar and starch, then maybe this is the time that you will look into those foods because in our experience, the moment that they've eliminated the simple sugars, lahat ng matatamis, and also the starch, which would include rice or bread or pasta, especially sa mga wala sa Pilipinas. Sometimes, kapag wala na sila sa Pilipinas, they actually trigger what we call as their gluten allergy. Because in the Philippines, hindi naman uso talaga masyado yung gluten-rich foods. The gluten are found in flour, in bread, pero for the ones na yung staple na pagkain ay kanin lamang, usually wala tayong gluten exposure. But the moment Filipinos migrate abroad, they are exposed to pasta, they are exposed to breads, and they are exposed to so much gluten na na-activate yung kanilang gluten allergy. So gluten is still a part of protein. It's a protein component of the grains. At yun yung isa sa mga triggers din. But when they eliminate the sugar and starch, they will see that the symptoms of allergies are subsiding. On my personal experience, usually ako for the longest times, I've been an ENT. So my specialty is ears, nose, throat. So one of the major disease na we are handling is actually allergic rhinitis. And grabe yung irony na to think I am a specialist, but I myself also maintains medicine for allergic rhinitis. Since 2016, no, 2014. So way back, intern pa lang ako, Arap lang ako in med school, I was already taking antihistamine almost every day. And then when I entered residency, I even started on nasal steroid spray. Okay, so nagme-maintain ako ng spray sa aking ilong ng steroid, and then every day I also take antihistamine, but still yung allergic bouts ko ay nandyan pa din to the point that I even double my dose more than the usual dose of my antihistamine just so hindi ako magmumukhang sipunin. But when I started doing low carb and fasting, yung ineliminate ko na yung sugar sa aking diet, and also I removed the starch, hindi na kami nagra-rice going 4 years now. The bread, the pasta, wala na rin. We just use, if ever man nagka-crave kami ng bread or pasta, we have low carb alternatives na surprisingly, sobrang dali lang naman pala gawin. Not the pasta, of course, but the bread. Marami lang, very easy recipe, parang 5-minute breads that you can make. You are welcome to check out our Facebook group, Life Without Rice, for food inspirations dyan. I think nasa 500 siguro yung recipes dyan on breads and pastries. Sobrang dami na, and they are all very easy to do. And when I started low carb, for the longest time, hindi na ako nagkaroon ng allergic bouts. Never na rin ako bumili ng steroid spray for my nose. And the last steroid spray that I've had ay na-expire na lang nang hindi ko ginagamit. And this is by eliminating simple sugars, especially sugar and starch. However, merong mangilan-ngilan na kahit pa nag-start na ng low carb, nag-improve yung kanilang psoriasis, nag-improve yung kanilang allergies, nag-improve yung kanilang mga pananakit sa katawan, especially rheumatoid arthritis. So those are part of autoimmune diseases, and yes, including myasthenia gravis. Meron din akong patient na merong myasthenia gravis, and surprisingly, all of them really recovered when they did low carb. However, merong iba na siguro out of 10 symptoms, nawala na yung 8, but hindi mawala-wala totally. Merong mga 2 to 3 na mga levels of aches and pains, levels of symptoms na nakikita nilang nanatili pa rin. And that is when we look into the details of low carb nutrition. We have our JGC Rojo food list. Our admins will post in the comments yung link sa JGC Rojo food list. There is the safe list. And generally, yung safe list na yan is okay na for those na walang autoimmune disease. Kasi kapag merong autoimmune disease ka na, it's somewhat like an end stage o target organ damage. Ibig sabihin, yung allergies mo became so severe na nagkaroon na nga ng mga components ang iyong katawan that it's already attacking its own self. So, the moment it already attacks its own self, medyo kailangan ng mas aggressive na way to manage it. And the more aggressive way to manage it is not just becoming dependent to medicine. Hindi lang basta maglasing ka sa steroids o ubusin mong inumin lahat ng steroid na makikita mo. No, actually, you just have to be more strict with your food intake. We have an autoimmune protocol. That is a food elimination protocol. And it's not just eliminating the dairies, the poultry, the eggs. Hindi lang yan. Hindi lang sa seafood. But it is eliminating those foods na alam natin na might trigger even more allergic response and autoimmune response sa katawan ng isang tao. Surprisingly, this might include foods that are approved in low carb, approved in vegan, approved in vegetarian way of eating, but in autoimmune protocol, they can actually trigger even more autoimmune na reactions. There are certain vegetables na sobrang taas sa anti-nutrients that people with autoimmune disease are already no longer tolerant. So that's why in our food elimination protocol, iniisa natin yan. There is a way for us to eliminate na this week you will do a food diary. Titingnan nyo muna what you have been eating, and every morning you assess yourself. Titingnan nyo kung nandyan pa yung symptoms na yon, kung nandun pa rin yung inyong mga nararamdaman, and slowly you can also try to remove those. Sometimes, like for Attorney Asra Conlu, for the longest time na nag-food elimination protocol siya, hindi pa rin mawala-wala completely yung kanyang symptoms, only to realize na meron siyang isang iniinom, tinatake in every day, na yun na lang yung consistent. And when she eliminated that, then the symptoms of those illness, of those aches and pains, ay nawala din. At alam nyo ba kung ano yon? It's actually green tea. So, green tea na akala natin is a superfood, an antioxidant, and all the goodness in it. And yes, I also believe that green tea is good. And I also drink green tea. In fact, yung pinapatungan ko ng cellphone ngayon is my tea, na yung in-order ko ay green tea, kaya nga lang hindi available, so Earl Grey tea na lang. But this just goes to show that there are people who are allergic to certain things that other people might not be allergic to. So that's why you really have to know yourself. Hindi natin pwedeng gawin na ang isang ganitong guidelines lang is applicable to you. You should know yourself kung ano yung inyong usual food intake, and you can monitor yourself. What we teach in our masterclass is not just a prescription na bibigay namin sa'yo na, oh, eto, gagawin mo. No. What we actually teach you is for you to understand kung ano yung nangyayari sa inyong katawan at kung ano yung babantayan ninyo at kung ano yung usual yung ginagawa, and you will get to know, you will get to analyze your own everyday work, your own everyday food intake, and you will understand how this one will work for you and how this one will affect your own body. At ikaw mismo ang makakaalam what is there, what is needed to eliminate, and which foods you can continue to eat. And good news though, kahit pa merong mga pagkain na during the autoimmune protocol na elimination period ay paborito ninyo, for example, but for certain times, kailangan nyo munang stop. There can also be a time once you are healed na you will already become available for food reintroduction. So, pwedeng-pwede that the foods that we've eliminated, say for example, the eggs, the chicken, they are actually very healthy foods. Kaya nga lang, if your body is inflamed during that time, hindi siya makakatolerate ng proteins na nasa egg and chicken. So, that's why kailangan ipa-lower down muna yung inflammation. We have to tame down yung level ng pamamaga sa ating katawan, and then the moment it's lowered down, you can see that we can now start to tolerate those kinds of food. Mas matotolerate natin, and those foods, you will see that they are really not the cause of your allergies. Our allergic reaction to those foods, to those healthy foods, are just the side effects. Symptom lang sila ng totoong problema, which is the inflammation. And the real problem, the real inflammation, is brought about by sugar and starch. That is why, instead of just looking for medicine, for which I did for, I think, more 5 years, I've been dependent on medications, and yet hindi pa rin successful yung paggamot ko sa aking rhinitis, sa aking allergies, but only with low carb and fasting, plus the incorporation of physical activities recently. Yon ang totally naka-eliminate na ng aking bouts. Even now, when you hear me talk, nasa nasal speech pa rin ako. Ibig sabihin yung parang barado yung ilong, even if hindi barado rin yung ilong ko. So if I breathe in, I can breathe in 100%. Buong hangin, I can easily breathe in. But because for the longest time, barado yung ilong ko, nasanay na akong magsalita na parang barado yung aking ilong. That's why I have this nasal speech. But it's not too late, especially na when we don't address our allergies. Eventually, kapag hindi natin ito naagapan, it can even worsen into autoimmune disease, and eventually, autoimmune diseases are now linked into more serious illness like cancer formation and even tumor formation that is secondary to those allergies. So, I hope you start to look into your food. So first, if kumakain pa kayo ng mga sweets, ng mga simple sugars and processed foods, eliminate that. Tapos, if eliminate nyo na yan at hindi pa rin successful yung inyong pag-heal when it comes to allergies and inflammation, then look into your starch intake. So, yung rice, yung kamote, yung patatas, yung kanin, yung pandesal, yung bread, yung pasta, yung noodles, you can look into that. If ever na-eliminate nyo na yan and wala pa rin nangyayari, then maybe you can look into your other foods that are also inflammatory, like the seed oils. Ano yung oil na ginagamit? If you are using canola oil, rapeseed oil, grapeseed oil, sunflower oil, at kung ano-ano pang seed oil, you might want to change it into better oils like coconut oil, or kung sa mga salad, extra virgin olive oil, because those foods are going to help you when you want to lower down your inflammation. And for those naman na nagkakaroon ng keto rash, it's also a different story. But when you do low carb and you do keto rash, it's part of the adaptation process, especially when you do it abruptly. Kapag bigla-bigla yung paggawa nyo nito and you did it all at once. Nag-low carb kayo, nag-fasting kayo, nag-exercise pa kayo, nag-MCT oil pa kayo, lahat-lahat na. So it's going to make your body produce more ketones na sobra-sobra pa sa kaya pang i-tolerate ng inyong katawan. And that is going to lead into excess ketones na lalabas sa inyong ihi, kaya mag-iiba yung amoy ng inyong ihi, maglalabas as bad breath, iba na yung amoy ng inyong hininga, and that can also be released in our sweat and in our skin, and that can be itchy for some, and that can lead into keto rash. So one way to avoid that, those mga symptoms, so side effects of transitioning to low carb, would just be making sure that you have enough electrolyte intake, especially salt intake, and also kung meron kayong adequate fluid intake. Plus, of course, make sure na hindi nyo muna bigla-biglaing sobrang taasan yung inyong fat intake. And also, don't force yourself if you know you are allergic to eggs and chicken for the longest time. Huwag muna itong bigla-biglain, okay? Try to eliminate muna the food elimination protocol that we just mentioned, and you can later you can try to incorporate. But while you are eliminating other foods that are known to be inflammatory, this is the time that you focus more on the safe food. So fish and beef, pork, those are the safe foods that you can eat in low carb na wala namang contraindication. And try to avoid the other extras, the condiments like the soy sauce, the kung ano-anong mga condiments na processed na. Try to limit them into just salt, pepper, and maybe some herbs and spices, because our allergies, hindi man siya nakakamatay immediately, but in what we call in medicine, it's going to have an effect in the quality of life. Maraming hindi nakakapasok sa school, maraming hindi nakakapasok sa trabaho, or di kaya pumapasok sa trabaho with poor performance because of allergic bouts. And sayang yung panahon that you could have been very productive. Baka nagawa nyo na sana yung inyong $1,000,000 idea if only you are able to focus, kung hindi sana kayo affected ng allergies, kung hindi sana barado yung ilong ninyo, o kung hindi sana kayo hinihika, and all those. So that's why you are better to be more sensitive and be more mindful in your food, and most especially, ito yung pinaka-importante, when it comes to children. So those of you who are parents o nag-aalaga ng mga bata na sobra nang nagwa-wonder bakit sipunin yung anak nyo, bakit noon hindi naman tayo ganun kasipunin. Because if you compare actually our sugar intake when we were young as compared to the sugar intake of the young kids now, sobra-sobra talaga, because their sugar intake is way more. It is embedded in everything, in their sandwiches, in their fruit juices, kahit nga sa gatas nila, it's more than 50% yan is made of sugar. That's why sa mga nagtatanong, anong safe na gatas para sa mga bata? The only safe would be breast milk. Kung wala ng breast milk yung mama, then pwedeng wala ng gatas yung bata. You can just give real foods for the kids. You can start them eating proteins. And you can see that their allergies will actually subside. Sa iba, meron akong kakilala na nagsasabing hindi daw niya kayang i-low carb yung kanyang anak kasi daw allergic sa eggs. So, what I thought is, hindi lang naman yung egg yung pwede mo actually ibigay. You can also give fish, you can also give pork, you can actually give burger steak. You can make it on your own, make it 100% beef. But I think it will all boil down to the parents, because yung mga bata, susunod lang naman kung ano yung prepare ng parents. Gusto mo nga siyang pakainin ng egg, pero hindi mo naman maiwan yung bread, yung pandesal, yung biscuits, yung crackers, yung Spanish bread, yung kung ano-ano mang mga pagkaing high carb na actually yun talaga yung totoong punot dulo ng inflammation sa katawan ng bata. And it's just so sad. Like for us, for you here who have been in our page, who have been supporting our advocacy, who are now part of Life Without Rice and Low Carb Feasting and Fasting community, sa atin ngayon, parang automatic na. The moment we see kids with allergies, automatic, titingnan mo yung baon niya, alam mo, high carb yan. Merong yogurt, merong sandwich, merong apple, merong banana, merong fruit juice, meron pang biscuits, merong mamon. All of those are carbohydrates on top of carbohydrates, carbs on carbs on carbs. And no wonder, bakit allergic yung anak mo? Bakit ang daming allergies ng anak mo? But for others, they cannot see that. That is why, for us who already know this, it is our duty to help others be aware. So you can help by sharing this video or our videos for them to be aware that there's actually a way, go around the way to managing allergies and autoimmune disease. Others might need some medications to start, but yung sinasabi natin, pwedeng-pwede na hindi na tayo maging ganon ka fully dependent on medications, most especially steroids, because steroids, it's a wonderful drug, but it should be used only on emergency cases. Hindi pwede yung steroids pang forever because steroids is a stress hormone, and supposedly we are only exposed to stress only on certain times. Hindi continuous, hindi all day, every day. And continuous high dose of steroid intake is also linked into many other illness. So that's why if we want to help others, let's help them by sharing our own journey. If kayo mismo, whenever you share this post, you can share and then you can write a caption kung ano yung inyong own health improvement when it comes to your health when you started low carb and fasting, when you did it the right way. So kung ano yung food nila, so they can eat food the same way as you do. Usually, you will just be surprised that children will just actually eat kung ano lang yung pagkain na kinakain din natin. But if you continue to eat that in front of them, then they will be confused. Hindi nila alam kung kakainin ba nila yan o hindi. And you will see how influential you are to children. Kasi meron akong mga kilala that even if they still cook rice, kasi merong mga members sa kanilang family that are still eating rice, and sila mismo hindi na kumakain, like nakikita ng mga bata na kinakain nila yung ulam lang, itlog at saka gulay. Eventually, slowly, the children just follows. Kahit hindi nila sinasabihan, they can see that this adult, their mom for example, or their dad for example, the one practicing low carb, they can also see the difference when it comes to their health, when it comes to how they carry themselves, and the children just follow. Makikita nila kung saan. But you have to be consistent. That is our job para naman yung transition ng mga bata ay hindi din ganun kahirap. And if you are not consistent yourself, one day you are low carb and then the next day nakikita ka niya kumakain din ng high carb, that's going to cause confusion sa mga bata. That's why for parents, kasi marami na akong mga pamangkin ngayon and I really want them to have a better future. I want them to not struggle the way we all struggled right now, na every day we need reminders so that we will not forget how bad foods can really make our health worse, can really burden us. And so, nagiging everyday siya na reminder for all of us. I do this to remind you and also to remind myself and also for the rest of the family. So that's why we are grateful na kahit paano, at least meron na tayong alam. Kahit pa feeling natin marami na tayo na nakakaalam nito, but actually, we are still the minority. That's why we are doing our best to make change, to at least start with awareness na hindi inosente ang kanin, hindi inosente yung sugar at yung mga pagkain na usually marketed for kids, mga protein bars, yung mga energy bars, yung mga instant breakfast cereals, yung mga tinitimpla lang na mga food items, the oatmeal drinks, all of those are actually made up of at minimum 50% of sugar, and generally nasa 75% niyan ay puro asukal lamang. If you learn how to get the nutrition facts at titingnan mo yung kaniyang net carbohydrates. So, yung net carbohydrates, kukunin mo yung total carbohydrates and then ima-minus mo doon yung fiber content. That is going to be the net carbohydrates. Kasi hindi nila sinasabi yan. Yung tinitingnan lang natin before is zero sugar. Say for example, yung isang pakete ng oatmeal, for example, merong 25 total carbs. Tapos yung fiber niya, for example, 5. So, tinitingnan yan na zero yung sugar. Pero 25 minus 5 fiber is actually 20. So yung 20 niyan, hindi nga siya sugar, but it's most likely pwede pa rin ma-convert into sugar. It could be starch, it could be a complex carbohydrates that can easily be converted into sugar kapag ito ay na-process na. So we have to be careful, we have to be mindful. And for those who are going into low carb already but hindi pa mawala-wala completely yung kanilang symptoms of allergies and autoimmune disease and who wish to know more about the proper food elimination protocol, kung paano ito gawin at kung paano ito sundin at kung paano ito safely maigagawa so that ma-lower down yung inflammation sa katawan and you can see yourself in a week. Our participants in our masterclass where we would like you to be a part of in first time in their lives for 15 years, for 20 years, they've suffered from autoimmune disease, from allergies, and only for the first time na kahit na noon, high dose na sila ng medications, there's no complete remission. Ibig sabihin, wala yung full recovery, 100% feeling normal. Only with food elimination protocol that they finally experience zero pain, zero itchiness, zero brain fog, just optimum functioning. Yun yung pinaka-amazing sa lahat. And yes, thyroid problems are also related with autoimmune diseases and diseases because of imbalance sa nutrition sa ating katawan and how it functions somewhat is related into our body attacking its own self. The common problems when it comes to thyroid would be Hashimoto's thyroiditis for hypothyroidism and it's Graves' disease for hyperthyroidism. Both are related into autoimmune disease. Merong mga antibodies na nag-a-attack sa sariling nating thyroid organ. And that is mostly related to wrong food intake. And sadly, it's the food intake na akala natin healthy food intake. We weren't able to take into account the nutritional profile and also the balance of calories or energy component ng pagkain na yun. Because there should be a proper balance when it comes to amount of calories na meron dyan and most importantly, the amounts of micronutrients in the form of vitamins and minerals. So if you wish to know more, we have an ongoing masterclass for autoimmune diseases, allergies, and inflammation. Including those, we also tackled the presence of infections, how our body reacts to infections, and how we can maximize food intake to make sure na mas madali nating ma-balance out, ma-counter yung mga infections sa ating katawan. Just message our Facebook group. It's LCF Masterclass by Josephine Gracie, Rojo, MD. Yung mga admins natin sa page na yan is just there to help you with your registration. And for food inspirations, kung gusto nyo magkaroon ng mga recipes when it comes to low carb, what you can serve your kids, your family on a day-to-day basis, you are more than welcome to join Life Without Rice group and also low carb feasting and fasting community. So, maraming salamat everybody. For those who wish to know more, message nyo lang po. Maraming salamat everyone. Always remember to stay low carb so that we all stay safe. Have a good day.